just saying to Herman, he's exhibit A of how to keep time. So that's how we do it. I'm now going to flip from program director into moderator mode, and I'm going to be joined by two incredible speakers. We've had some time together on the phone and on other events as well. Please help me welcome to stage Olivier Granet, managing partner and co-chief executive officer of Kasada Capital Management, as he makes his way to stage. A round of applause. And Virginia Messina, Senior Vice President, Advocacy and Communications at WTTC. A round of applause, please, as they make their way to stage. I'm so lucky. I get to build like the greatest relationships with the coolest humans. These happen to be two of those cool humans. And we're just going to really speak frankly and just jump right into it. We are in Africa, and we're always speaking about, potential to prosperity, how we can monitor the growth of tourism, but utilizing the private and public sector. I think we've heard triple P at so many different conferences. But I just want to jump right into it, and I think I'm going to start with you, Olivier. Can we really reach prosperity from Africa's current potential? And is the key lying in the synergy of private and public sector, or is it lying more in their collaboration or their integration? Can you please just weigh in on that?
Thank you, Thami. Good morning to everyone. It's always exciting to discuss about the potential, the opportunities, and that's what we do in all the conference. But then it's even better to how to make it happen.
Exactly.
And how to switch from the nice opportunities to actual deliveries and output. And this is how we started Kasada, with the view that in this market where we operate, which is very fragmented, which is undersupplied, there is a need to bridge the gap between the local investor, the opportunities that exist, and the financial community, and to bring the scale and expertise that is needed to make it happen. And as investor, allocation of your resources and time is always a key success factor. And there is always a discussion on, shall I focus on our transaction and in what we do, or what is the need to engage in this discussion between public and private sector, and what is the expectation and the objective? It's very clear, based on the two most important challenges that we have on the continent, which are how we can attract more liquidity in the market and we can get more investors coming, and how we can get higher portion of domestic travelers, which means that all decisions related to create, and as mentioned by the minister this morning, to support the ecosystem for the investor and to create an environment which is more favorable to investment, and how we work on all the discussion around the visa, the travel, and to facilitate the domestic and regional market for the travelers, is a key part of our success. And this is where we have to contribute and to engage in a positive dialogue and work together between public and private sector.
So I'm going to move, and I love what you said, ecosystem. An ecosystem for me means that everybody plays a role in some way that wants to play a role. I don't think it's any secret, if you are in the travel and tourism space, to know that I've done some really beautiful work with WTTC, and I really do just clap hands, for the impact that they've made on the economics and the growth of tourism, and not just that, but creating jobs themselves. So there's a report that they've just released, which incredible report, by the way. I got to read it. But I think if we're going to have a fluid and an integrated ecosystem, we must all know the roles that we play. So please, could you firstly let us know what role WTTC plays, but also the latest stats that you actually mentioned in the report towards the economic growth.
Thank you, Thami, and great to be here, particularly with Olivier, who's a great champion for the region, and thank you to Jonathan and all the team. So yes, we know we love an acronym, but the World Travel and Tourism Council, for those that don't know us, has been around for over 30 years, really advocating on behalf of the huge social and economic impact that our sector has. So we bring together the top sort of 200 presidents and chief executives across the whole ecosystem. So all the way from aviation, transportation, cruise, rail, all onto the technology platforms and literally every quarter of our sector. And what we do is advocate through this very robust data and insights. So just to put things into context, our sector last year generated about 10% of the global economy. And that was about nearly $11 trillion. So despite everything we've gone through and despite the huge hit that COVID took on us, we are back on track. We are growing at an incredible pace. We have a forecast of growth for the next decade of 3.5%. So I think we are in the right sector, Olivier. And now bringing that into the region, of course, Africa has huge potential. The sector currently represents about 7.5% of the continent's economy and employs about 30 million people. Now, interestingly, more than 50% of this are young people and women. So we are a sector that tends to have a higher rate of hiring some of these minorities, which is obviously a huge opportunity. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, across this region, and we know how huge it is and the diversity that there is, the recovery has not been at the same pace. 2024 was certainly a good year. So the sector was about 10% above its 2019 levels already, representing the third fastest recovery behind the Caribbean and the Middle East. So again, it's really positive. And everything we're looking into the future is investment growing at about 4% rate. So thank you to Olivier and all his investors, because that is showing, and actually a 9% year-on-year growth last year when it comes to investor, and the same for the sector. So again, really positive, but the big question is what we need to do, and I'm happy to follow up with that. But yeah, do read the report, because we're showcasing a lot of the really excellent practices across the continent.
I'm going to stick with you because I like this, what we need to do. And I've never been on a stage, it doesn't matter what sectors, I don't think it's news that I'm moderator across all sectors, where we cannot talk about policy. And I think that policy is a great initiative if it gives us enabling tools, because you can't change it overnight. But what are the policy enablers for Africa to reach its potential? What do we need to prioritize? What do we actually need to prioritize?
Well, I think there's a number of things. First, the first thing we need to prioritize is the sector, is really understanding the huge potential that this sector can bring to those figures I just shared could be much higher, and that's the reality. And so I think that sort of public and private collaboration, and I know it sounds, we've said it so many times, but there's no way one side can do it on its own. So it really needs to, you really need to work hand in glove, and of course, all the different forums like this where you enable that sort of collaboration and dialogue are essential. Everything else, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but things like, enhancing infrastructure and connectivity is essential for a continent so big, and so more local airlines, more airport hubs, but also more digital infrastructure, which is going to be essential for our sector in the future. Visas, again, been on the agenda for more than 20 years.
Way too long.
But the truth is, I was just looking at the African Visitor Visa Openness Index, and there's some good progress. About 33 of 54 countries, are now offering visa-free for about 10 countries in the continent. Again, still not enough. We're also seeing some countries actually going backwards and imposing new restrictions across the same continent. So this is inevitably going to deter growth. Marketing is actually another big thing. I mean, we work across the globe with all sorts of governments, and I would particularly point at the Middle East, which is a region that is massively transforming through tourism, but investing huge amounts into marketing. So I would really think about, marketing strategies. And the last one I will say is labor, and training. We were having a conversation yesterday with Olivier and the group about how relevant that is. We have an incredible young population, and this sector offers huge opportunities, but we need to upskill, reskill, retain, and all those things. So it's, through those partnerships that we're going to be able to do it.
So I had, and I'm going to throw this one at you, Olivier. I had the privilege last week of moderating a panel on G20. And although it's happening in South Africa, G20 is really across the globe. And we also got to work on the United Nations Sustainability Development Framework, because obviously we need to work on other priorities from 2025 until 2030. What was interesting for me in this G20 conversation is we were chatting about how do we open up things for trade. And I just thought, why is everybody looking at tourism as if tourism should figure things out on its own when it can help everybody even with trade? We're sitting in Africa, somebody needs to fly to Europe to fly back to Africa, and everybody's looking at it as just flights, but that's actually connectivity and routes open. And I say this because I think all Africans really will agree with me. It's so frustrating to hear about the potential of Africa, but not actually seeing it realized as fast as we'd like to for our continent and our home. And I love practical conversations. What do you think the low-hanging fruits, what do we need to implement? And it segues, on what you said on the marketing, but what is it that we could do as individuals, as those that love Africa, those that are Africans, that will get us the outcomes now?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And there was, at the last Africa CEO Forum, with most of the CEOs of the continent, there was Mr. Dangote and saying that I'm sitting here, I can see a lot of participants, it was in Abidjan, and I can see a lot of participants coming from France and other countries. They have no visa, they come here. I'm African, and every time I'm traveling on the continent, I need to get some visas. And that's a key issue. You have, in most of the successful markets, you have 80% of the visitors who are, in fact, it's a domestic or regional market. On the African continent, it's 40%.
Which is
and what does it mean? It means that this has an impact on the investor, it has an impact on the guest, because what it means that the occupancy rate, it's very difficult to go above 50-60% in most of the market in the key cities on the African continent, because you have the lack of leisure market, especially during the weekend. So you capitalize on the business on your business travelers, but it's not enough to reach the 70-80% occupancy and above, which means that to get the necessary cash flow and the capacity on the capex and to reinvest in your property and then to get the best guest experience, it's very challenging for the hotel owner. And that's one of the challenge, reaching a situation where investors are not getting the good return on investment, and travelers have the perception that it's expensive for a quality which is not always the best one. And that's what we need to transform. So that's why this discussion on all the free trade agreement and the capacity for the people and for the goods to travel on the African continent, it's so critical. And that's one of the role of the Investor Council, where we like to in fact, based on the experience on number of countries, we look at the best practice, and then we can provide some example and contribute to the discussion with the government on what is happening in different countries and what type of solution they can find to facilitate the experience for the travelers.
And we're going to touch on the Investor Council right now, seeing as we're moving on to investment. I don't think, ever since I won't say which event it happened at. I might just get myself into trouble. But they were speaking about, Africans have got the solutions, but they need the money. Give us the money. And then we will implement the solutions. And I'm going to throw this one at you, Virginia, is we can't talk moving forward without talking about focusing on investment. But obviously, when I speak to you, I'm speaking about tourism and investment, and the fact that we can learn from each other actually intracontinentally. We don't always have to look internationally for examples. So perhaps you can speak to some of the success stories in Africa, the African countries who've done it really well when it comes to focusing on tourism and investment.
Yeah. Well, of course, it's hard to choose because it is a big country and there are some really good examples. But I would focus, on one that is close to our heart, which is Rwanda, because we had our first ever WTTC Global Summit there 2 years ago. But the truth is, Rwanda, as we all know, has a remarkable story, having, experienced one of the worst human tragedies only 30 years ago, and then have completely transformed as a population. And really, tourism has been at the core of that, through the conservation of the mountain gorilla, which was nearly doubled in its population through this effort, and really, putting, as I was saying, tourism as the focus. So I think that's a country we work very closely with, and we're very proud of that, of how tourism has clearly, changed the livelihoods of millions of people in every aspect, and also preserved the very own natural resources we depend on. I think the second one I would highlight is Kenya, another country that is having incredible growth, like double-digit growth, more than 20% above its pre-pandemic level in terms of contribution, nearly 30% above in international visitor spending, so attracting loads of travelers. But the other thing Kenya is doing really well is investing in renewable energy.
Yeah.
So again, all of these things around resources, about the future, we need to also be looking at those solutions. Kenya's already more than 20% of its energy is nuclear or renewable, which is great, and they're seeing some really good impact through that. So I think there's a number of examples, but I think when we put those sustainability really at the core of our sector, then we will see that sort of long-term positive growth.
Yeah, and that's exactly about it. It's sustainability is the longevity, and sustainability. I think a lot of people look at just the emphasize the planet part, but sustainability is also handing down the batons to other people with whatever you learn and the lessons, so that the generations to come don't go through the same mistakes that we have gone through. So she's mentioning the class captains, I'll call them that, Rwanda and Kenya, but there's many other examples, and I implore us as Africans, learn from each other, and don't make the same mistakes as your fellow African countries. I'm going to close off with you, Olivier, and I'm going to ask you this because you touched on the Investor Council and the findings that you have. We're really thankful for the work that you already do, and we may have some people who know somebody that wants to be part of the Investor Council. You could never have enough investment. I think I say that with a lot of emphasis. If they want to take part, how do they do that, and what does it all entail in terms of helping Africa reach its potential, rather move from potential to prosperity?
Absolutely. So we have to join forces.
Yeah.
Thank you to Jonathan, to Matthew, and all the team to support this initiative. We started 1 year ago in Namibia last year. It was the first meeting, 10 people around the table. It's quite impressive how now we expand. The idea is to be as much as possible representative of the investor on the continent, on the different part of the continent, and different profile of investor. So this is a group which is open. Everybody is welcome. Every investor is welcome.
I was about to say, if you are in investment.
If you are investor, and if you share objectives and principle of responsible investor.
Right.
It's driven around sustainability and the positive impact that we can create in the economies and countries we invest in. And we have three main pillars. So today we represent around 20,000 rooms, and more important than that, 20,000 employees and significant amount of investment. But again, this group is open with three key pillars. To collect the data and listening to WTTC and Virginia, it's what is the impact that we have in different countries and how we can have access to accurate data and all speak the same language. Then it's about sharing the best practice, and that's just what we have done now with the minister, based on our experience as investor in different parts of the continent, how we can share best practice and contribute then to a constructive discussion between public and private sector based on the best practice and our experience on the continent. And with what we've discussed, and to transfer the potential to prosperity and to make it happen, this group of investors, I believe, can play an important role. And to do it with bringing also the expertise that exists in different parts of the world on the African continent. And that's why it's important to discuss with WTTC and others and to get the benefits. So it's really about joint forces. And again, every investor is more than welcome.
Thank you. And you finished us in like 1 second left on the panel. I think my findings for today is that we can definitely reach prosperity from potential as Africa. We just have to be interested and informed on how to do it. It's about catching the lowest hanging fruits with the biggest impacts first for our continent. So please, a round of applause for my panelists.
Thank you. Well done.